Okay, so here's some more, friends, and welcome back to 5 Agendas. So this is MATHAY explained in modern parables from the November 1st, 2019 thought paper. Now we're going to do a video, which will be this one on the CEO, next video on the theme park, and then the bus driver. So here we have a preface, and we talk about John Bunyan and what he had to say about metaphors from the book Pilgrim's Progress. And so in the link below will be this thought paper that you can go and read that. But we will start with the parable. Okay. The CEO. A prince arrived at a very poor village from a far-off distant land. His father told him that he had 2,300 days to clean up that poor village. But he first had to become a garbage man, and that he would be hated and despised and would finally end up in a garbage dump himself, as well as having all the junk dumped on him. At the end of the first 490 days, everything his father said came true. He was supposed to clean the garbage from that village, but instead the people treated him like garbage and threw him outside of the village. But after 3 days, his father called him out of the garbage dump for the second part of his job. He was now promoted as the head chief executive officer of all the villages, both in the far-off land of the father, as well as the poor village which hated him, as well as all the other towns and cities that were near and far from that poor village. Well, the day arrived, and his father sent a team of workers, and one of them called the prince out of a small house that a very nice person made for him just outside of the garbage dump where they had originally placed him. After he heard the call, he came out and was dressed in white and shining clothing, ready for his new assignment. He was now the CEO or president of the company that was in charge of taking all the garbage from all those villages and placing it on the former evil worker who caused the big mess. Unfortunately, the one who was blamed for all the trouble of scattered garbage was the father, and not this former worker who lied and deceived everyone in that poor village, as well as the adjoining towns, cities, and other villages. The time came 1,810 days after returning to his father and completing the first portion of his work, garbage man, that he would throw out the garbage of those who would voluntarily take out their dumpsters and place them on the street. Most of those people from the poor village opted out of this deal and didn't take out their dumpsters with all the garbage that they had, so that the cleanup crew could clean each village or person that accepted the voluntary offer. Many rejected the offer, but some of those people in the poor village did accept the offer. And there were others in different towns and villages that became aware of this new way of handling the problem of the garbage dumps in their own towns and villages and in their own lives. Another reason for the second part of the work of the prince was that accusations were made against the retired president, who was in fact the father. The former evil worker stated terrible things about him, and that is the reason why the father appointed the prince as the new president and CEO. The son would go before the executive board of the father's house and refute all the lies and accusations against the father. But in order to do this, he would first have to cleanse his workers, since this would reveal to the father's house the manifold wisdom of the father. in dealing with the issue of the accusations, as well as how he would reconcile those families in the different poor villages, as well as those dwelling in the Father's house unto himself. The Father, by way of the Son, would reveal the whole program on how the issue of the garbage dump problem would be resolved. See? It would be explained to the citizens of the Father's house that it was to be a dual program, a dual atonement of his Son becoming garbage and filth on behalf of those individuals in the different poor villages that the former evil worker claimed as belonging to him. And later, the second part of the Father's program would be the promotion of his Son to CEO and president, as well as the elimination of the garbage dump, as well as the final rain shower that he would cause to take place in the waters, which the Father would prepare by way of sending his Son, the Prince. Although there was no garbage problem in the Father's house, there was a stench that issued forth from the poor villages, and the Father put a stop to other construction projects at his house until the problem would be resolved. So the date arrived at the Father's house, and everyone was excited, since the final order for the removal of all waste, such as dirt and gook, grease and slime, was issued by way of 3 workers. 3 messages. He called this final cleanup job the everlasting gospel. Everyone that had volunteered to take out their garbage received a special reward known as the seal of the CEO's approval. The Father and the Prince were watching the whole affair intently and were very proud of all who volunteered, and the towns and villages, as well as all the rich citizens who dwelt in the Father's far-off land, beheld the whole spectacle with amazement. They just couldn't believe what they were witnessing. The citizens of the Father's house were congratulating the Father on account of his wisdom and love, as well as his infinite patience, on account of the fact that up to that point, it seemed to many that perhaps the former evil worker might be correct in his assessment that people who brought out their garbage were just as dirty and filthy and evil as he was, and that they didn't deserve to be promoted, since they had such a bad record of pollution and filth, as witnessed by the residents of the Father's house. Some of these people had a name. They were called Laodiceans, and only a few of them were cleansed, and there were other groups called Babylonians. The Father informed these Laodiceans and Babylonians that if they refused the showers of cleansing, they would be wiped out by the fire purification system at the end of the cleansing. And there were also others outside of these 2 garbage dumps who were totally on the side of the former evil worker. However, the residents of the Father's house called the volunteers men of wonder. After the cleanup job was completed, the former evil worker was blamed for all the lies that he told, as well as all the bad things that he did on account of all the scattered waste in the poor village. Those who didn't accept the offer tried to show up at the celebration that the CEO president held for all the townspeople that volunteered to take out their garbage and place it on the street. There was a particular fellow there who showed up from the poor village, and he was one of the ones who told lies about the prince, saying that he would ruin the village and that another company would come and take their village away if they listened to the prince. Then it just so happened that when he stepped into the building, the guards had to summon the prince, since this person claimed to know the prince and stated that he was an old friend and that they had a disagreement, and that he wanted to fix everything that took place between them, and that he also wanted to enjoy the celebration. So when the prince saw him, he informed the visitor that he was not dressed for the occasion, since he didn't take out his garbage and put it on the street, so that the everlasting gospel crew could pick it up and dump it on the former evil worker. The prince stated the following: "Friend, while I was with you, you didn't listen to me, and you told me that I was wrong, and that the former evil worker was right, and that he was blessing the poor village. Now that you see the result of my work, you want to join me in my celebration, but it's too late for that. You now have to join your friend, the former evil worker, in the garbage dump that my Father has prepared for him, as well as for you, you worker of iniquity. I also have to inform you that the color of the clothing in the celebration is white, but you are dressed in red, the color of my blood that was shed to save you, in order for you to wear the white garments. But you refused and had me thrown in the garbage dump, so away with you." Immediately the order was given, and the everlasting gospel crew took him away and dumped him in a place where all the wicked towns people, as well as the red workers of the former evil worker, were now in prison for going against the company policy, which can be expressed in a mathematical formula for success. This mathematical equation is known as the two immutables, which summarize the work of the prince. Sacrifice plus death equals reconciliation, plus high priestly CEO equals cleansing, equals sanctuary, equals clean village, equals good workers can now return to the far-off land as if they were never dirty or filthy. The prince made it clear that this was company policy. My sacrifice as the garbage man and the cleansing that I offer as the CEO or president of my father's company, called the 144,000 and Great Multitude Incorporated, is the motto that we live by. No one can sue that company or take them to court. I cleanse them, and no accusation can be brought against them. So now they can enjoy life with me and will be welcomed into my Father's house, where they will show others how I ran my company and how they participated in the work. They will be an example in the years to come by revealing what a great price had to be paid in order for the 144,000 and Great Multitude Incorporated to be established forever. As it turns out, the citizens of the Father's house were satisfied. The Father, by way of his Son and CEO president, had proven to them that all the accusations were false. The citizens of the Father's house were overjoyed, knowing that their questions would finally be resolved and that the Father's house would not experience any danger from additional pollution. The stench from the poor villages was finally gone, and the Father and the Prince again embarked upon their reconstruction projects in the Father's house. 1,000 years later, the fire purification systems were brought in and carried out the final cleansing of the poor villages. A most glorious event then took place. The Father and the Prince moved down to the former poor villages and made their home with all the cleansed citizens. From then on, life would be good, clean, and exciting. The Prince stated, "I have come to give them life more abundant." Boy, the Prince wasn't fooling around. He was serious. Everything was so beautiful and amazing with brilliant living colors that the human mind could not comprehend. The divine artistry of the Father and the Prince was beyond our imagination. there you have the parable of the CEO. And I think that to most, the parable is obvious. Okay. I won't do much about as far as explaining it. But as always, if you have any questions, the email is below in the description box. Please feel free to write. God bless, and stay tuned for the next modern day parable called The Theme Park.